I'm not sure I remember how to do this.
I think you do.
You think so? Is it like riding the bike?
I think it is.
It'll just come back to us?
I think it will.
All right. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. Is that right? Reuben Frank?
Let me check this. Yes.
You're Reuben Frank, and I'm Dave Zangaro, and this is the Eagle Eye Podcast. This is
been
fun.
a while. It's been a while.
It has been a while. We're back. Summer's over for us, at least, and we're getting ready for training camp. The Eagles are reporting today as we record this on Tuesday morning. First practice of the summer on Wednesday. But before we get to practice, we just figured we'd do a pod and kind of set the scene a little bit.
Yeah, don't you miss the first day of camp when we would be up there at Lehigh and the players would show up and we would talk to them and that was always a fun day.
Yeah, they'd be like bringing in like video game systems and TVs, and you watch all the fancy cars pull up.
Yeah, try to get, and then you'd see like a jalopy, and it was like some rookie undrafted. Yeah, I'll never forget at Westchester, Jerome Brown showing up with. He gets out of his Jeep, and all he's got is a briefcase. He's got no shirt on. He's got a briefcase and a drum set.
Pretty good.
That's all he brought to Westchester. But yeah, it's seems like it's been a long off season. Lots happened, a lot of changes, and finally back on the field on Thursday morning.
Yeah, Wednesday morning.
You're right.
They will be on the field Thursday morning.
I was testing you, see how well you learned the schedule. Yeah. Wednesday morning.
I'm excited. And we always kind of joke about it, but I really do love training camp. It's my favorite time of the year to cover the team because we get to watch football every day, which you don't normally get to do. Like during the season, we watch practice for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's
they're not really doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's our only chance. These next few weeks are our only chance to see all of practice, other than a couple of days of OTAs, maybe 3 days, I guess.
Yeah.
Mandatory. So yeah, we'll get to see, and you can't hide out there. So we'll know pretty quickly who the frauds are, who the surprises are, who can play, who can't play, and we'll see the roster take shape.
Yeah, we hope everyone enjoyed our content over the last month or so. We didn't want to leave you guys high and dry, so we did pre-record a lot of those, but I thought people seemed to like them.
Yeah, people seem to like the one we did where we asked each other stupid questions about our lives and kind of non-Eagles questions, and got to know us a little bit better.
Before we get into the
might
Eagles,
not like us as much anymore. But.
That's probably true. Before we get into the football stuff, how was your summer?
Good summer. Got away a little bit. Went up to the Finger Lakes for the first time.
I've actually never been there. Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back. A lot of great hikes that you would have enjoyed. A lot of waterfalls. A lot of state parks all over the place,
mm-hmm.
and it's spectacular. Like and the Finger Lakes are all so close together. I didn't realize. And we're also there. You're only 30 miles south of Canada.
Yeah,
I didn't realize how far up it is. But we were between Geneva, New York, and Watkins Glen, and it was spectacular. I loved it, and can't wait to go back. You went a little farther than me.
I did. I was in Northern California and Oregon for a little under 2 weeks, but it was really fun road trip. Hit a few national parks along the way, met up with some friends.
Now, how many national parks is that for you?
I'm at 40 now.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. There's 63.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's going to be the hardest one to get?
American Samoa. It's just like you just got to get there. It's hard to get there, and honestly, like the
would it be easier to get to like Canadian Samoa?
the Alaskan ones are tricky.
Denali, have you been to Denali?
I have not been to Denali, and that's one I obviously really want to go there, but it takes some planning.
Yeah, I guess.
And it takes planning, and it's also like you don't want to cram. I've been guilty of like trying to cram too much into trips, and then you end up like feeling like you never really even saw a place. Like because I'm always trying to like cram stuff into a trip, and then you end up.
Yeah, because you want to get back here and do a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I did though? On the end of my trip, I went to the shore, and it was a good way to like relax because I didn't do much relaxing. It was a lot of like hiking, and I calculated it was like over 80 miles of hiking, which is a lot for me. So I got to just go to the beach and relax for a few days.
That sounds good. there's a park called Watkins Glen State Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool because it's right in the middle of town. Like you could be walking down, there's like a pizza place, and then there's like a souvenir store, and then there's an entrance to the state park. And you can just park on the street and walk in if you get there early enough. And it's a spectacular trail. There's 834 steps. They're like rock steps up, and so you just keep going up and up and up. I was coming out. I think I did it 3 times while we were out there. And the third time, this woman was at the entrance with a cane, and she obviously was having trouble getting around. And she's like, "Do you think I can make it to the waterfall at the end?" I'm like, "I don't think so, but good luck to you." And she went for it. She's like, "I'm going to try." I give her a lot of credit. But I think there's 7 waterfalls along the way.
Okay.
There's one you can walk behind it. You can actually walk behind the waterfall, which is spectacular. And if you go early enough, like sunrise, it's pretty empty. So
yeah, that's my key for, people always tell me how crowded the national parks are. Not at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
You got to do it. You just got to get out. And I always say, like, get there early and then do long hikes, because the majority of people going to these big parks are like stopping at the viewpoints. And I love that people can do that. Like, you don't have to be able to climb and hike, and you can see stuff, which is awesome. But if you want to get away from people, which I generally do, you can find ways.
Yeah. Can't wait to go back. And by the way, I appreciate that you said Oregon correctly. You didn't say Oregon. Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon. Yeah. Okay. If people say Oregon?
Well, Chip Kelly he didn't like when people mispronounced it. I think some people say Oregon. Yeah.
Okay.
Oregon.
I don't think I've ever even thought of that before.
And it's Maine. It's not Maine. Anyway.
Maney. All right. Football.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the season. Before we get into, we have like questions, and we'll go position by position on this roster as I get attacked by a fruit fly. This is just a weird season to me, and I was just, people ask me, like, what do I expect from this season? I don't know. Like, normally by this time of year, I feel like I have a pretty good sense of the team, and it doesn't mean I'm right. I mean, I've been wrong plenty of times, but you're like, you feel convicted. You feel like what's going to happen. Do you know what's going to happen this year?
I don't. And it's funny that you say that, because I was just talking about this very thing with, I was on the radio with Rob Ellis, and we were just saying, like, I don't know what they are. And I think there's so many changes. And the way last year ended, was that a fluke? Did they kind of excise the reason for that? Did they diagnose it and fix it? Or was that kind of a sign of deeper issues? I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't make the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked if they go to the Super Bowl. I really don't know. And it's kind of fun that way. And I think it makes training camp a lot of fun. There's more position battles than most 11-win teams are going to have. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly an interesting season. And yeah, I'm with you. I have no clue. And I think it's going to be fun to watch it unravel.
Yeah. I mean, the Eagles clearly told you what they thought the problems were.
Right.
Like their actions.
And that's the thing. Like, they're not going to come out and say, we got too old on defense, or we were too slow on defense, or our coordinators weren't capable. They're not going to say that, but their actions tell you everything you need to know. And overhauling the defensive personnel, the coaching staff, those are the biggest things. Kind of tells you what they were thinking. Yeah.
And we'll see. And the Nick Sirianni angle on this, it's kind of a weird, I can't remember anything quite like it, where, he's had all this success, but if you had to pick one person most responsible for the collapse last year,
97%.
Yeah, it might be him. And then he's back, but he has this different role this year. Yeah. And we can finally talk about, we had an embargoed session. The Eagles do this every year with the beat writers. We got to sit down with the head coach at the end of the spring practices. And it's basically so we have content leading in the training camp. What did you make of his demeanor? I thought he seemed like the most relaxed I've seen from Nick Sirianni in a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't get a lot of opportunities to talk to him in that kind of setting. What was it, about an hour we were in there?
About, yeah.
Um, yeah, and I thought he was pretty honest, which is
He finally admitted that it was tough for him to like cede control of his offense.
he did. And we wrote a bunch of stories off the interview. I thought he's really honest, which isn't always going to be the case during the season, competitive advantage and all that. But yeah, I thought it was pretty revealing for him. I was most interested in, like, he knows if they're bad, he's getting fired. And he said that. He's like, if we don't win, I'm not here. I understand that. I need to get a job. And maybe that's why he's so relaxed, because it's kind of like, you know what? It's all there. It's all they have to do is win, and he understands what's happening if they don't. But it adds to the drama of the season, certainly, when the coach, and I can't think of his team was like, if they make the playoffs, he's only the 6th coach in history to make the playoffs his first 4 years. So, but if they don't, I think he should get fired after the way last year ended. And if you follow that up with a 9-8, 8-9, whatever they end up being, or even a first round, like a wild card round loss, I think he's probably gone. So I think that really adds to the drama of the whole season, all the change, and could be more certainly this offseason.
Yeah, had Jeffrey Lurie fired him after last year, I don't think many people would have said it was a crazy overreaction based on the way things went.
I thought he was.
I did too. When I watched Jeffrey Lurie walk down the hallway at Raymond James Stadium, I thought the head coach is going to get fired.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him for bringing him back. I think Nick does have good traits.
Yeah.
And I know Nick's kind of become like a punching bag for a lot of fans, but I do think there's good in there. And we know the Eagles are not like super scheme driven when it comes to the head coach, where some teams want their head coach to be the offensive play caller. The Eagles haven't really cared about that as much. So you understand, if he has these other attributes, but you can also question that based on the collapse last
right.
year.
Right.
It's all very fascinating.
It is. And I don't think you get to 34-17 if you don't have some significant ability as a leader and a coach. Mm-hmm. He's got one of the best records in NFL history, for a coach after 3 years. So I think the people that, and it's interesting how he's become such a, what did you call him?
A punching bag.
Punching bag. Yeah. Punchline, whatever punch, euphemism, metaphor you want to use. But he definitely has some good qualities. You don't go to the Super Bowl your second year, and if you don't. Yeah.
But it always kind of goes back to what, like, is he, even when they hired him and we saw what kind of guy he was, like, how long is this going to last?
Sure.
Like, is there longevity here with a guy who kind of wears his heart on his sleeve, who is like super emotional, who, has some traits that some players might roll their eyes at.
Right.
Like, you wondered, like, is he going to be here for the long term, or is this going to be a short stint?
I remember right after he got hired, I'd requested an interview with him to talk about his core values and how he developed them. Because back then it wasn't really like a joke. It was,
we hadn't been beaten into the ground.
Yeah.
By them. Yeah.
And just connection. I think I focused on the whole connection thing and why that was important. And I remember I was sitting in my car. I did a Zoom call with him. I was sitting in my car in North Wales when I got the call, and in a parking lot. And I said, don't you think players are going to get like tired of it? And, it might, like, that whole thing might, after a year or two, might get really stale. And he's like, I don't know. I don't think so. And like now it kind of, there's so much turnover. Maybe it's not the issue, but if we start getting tired of hearing the same old stuff from them over and over and over, even when it doesn't fit, like it's out of context, you can imagine what the players think. And I'm sure there is some eye rolling at meetings when he gets up there and they've lost 5 in a row or 3 in a row. And he's talking about, we got to double down on connecting and core values. It's like, come on. Yeah. Like, we need a defense is what we need here. But yeah, there's definitely something there, because he's had success, and it's come in different forms with different coordinators. And Yeah, interesting.
All right, you want to go through position by position?
Yes.
We'll start with offense. We'll just cycle through. I have one big question for each position. We can talk a little bit about some of the other guys that we don't mention in the big question, but let's start with quarterback. And I think it's obvious, can these new coaches get the most out of Jalen Hurts?
Yeah. And once again, he's got a new play caller. He's got a new coordinator. He's got a new quarterbacks coach. So he talked pretty openly back in the spring, surprisingly openly for him, about how he thinks all the change in coaching has held him back or hasn't really allowed him to be the player he thinks he can be. And I think there's something to that.
Well, heck, you look at his best season came in year 2 of Sirianni and Steichen.
Shane's second year as play caller, or first and a half.
Mostly.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think there's something to that. It's just going to be a matter of how he responds to Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier. It's certainly, I mean, I think I've said this before. Andy Reid would always say when we asked him about Donovan, it takes a quarterback 5 years in a system to really master it. He's never had more than 2 years. So this is year 1 again. And that goes back to Bama and Oklahoma. You know, we've talked about this a lot. So it's a huge question. I think he'll be okay. I think Kellen Moore, just kind of looking at his history and his background, I think he'll, as long as Jalen trusts him, I think he'll be able to get him to a pretty good place. But it is a question. Yeah, certainly going in.
And that 95% new, I think that was probably the quote of the offseason, because, you know, if it's true, which no reason to think it's not true, I think it's probably mostly talking about the terminology, because I understand, like, you know, a 9 route's a 9 route, right? But like, what is the play? What are we saying in the huddle? Like all those things.
But also formations.
Sure.
I think there's other new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. But like, certainly, but 95% is probably more. Whereas like you look at what Nick Sirianni was saying, it's like, we're not going to reinvent football here. It's going to be a lot of what we've done. You're still going to see, but I think it is really new. And I think there's a reason Jalen wanted everyone to know how new it's going to be. Whether it's just being honest, which, you know, I don't know if that's Jalen's MO all the time, but the other one is like it's tempering some expectations here that, right. Yeah, we're learning a completely new system and it's going to take some time.
Yeah. That's how I interpreted it. That, as well as I think he was kind of saying it had to be, like, we needed this kind of change too. I think there was some of that in there. Like he's happy that it's 95%, and that might be an exaggeration too, a little bit. Yeah. Because, and I think Nick said this back in the spring, there are some things the offense did well last year. I mean, they were the number 5 offense in the league through the Buffalo game, and I think they finished 7th. So, like, it wasn't a complete disaster all year. It was a disaster at the end, certainly. But if I'm taking over this offense, I'm keeping stuff that worked last year, certainly, but just not being as predictable with it. But they did some good stuff.
Yeah, no question. I'm curious to see the dynamic now between Sirianni, Kellen Moore, and Nussmeier. You know, Jalen obviously knew Brian Johnson pretty well, and now he's got like all new people in there. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I think at this point in his career, he has earned more say, and that can be good or bad.
Yeah. And I never got the sense that he was devastated that Brian Johnson was gone. They obviously known each other a long time. But I think Jalen understood that there was a reason for it. And like, you could be best friends with somebody and understand that maybe it's not working out. You know,
well, something needed to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So, look, the Cowboys in Kellen Moore's 4 years as OC, and I think with similar talent, I would say to what the Eagles have. Sure. They were number 2 in like first downs, third down conversion, and points, and they were number 4 in yards, something like that. And they were one of the better offenses in the league. So I think that certainly something Kellen Moore can, and even in his first year there, and he had been there obviously as QB's coach, so it wasn't a completely new thing. But I don't think there's any reason this offense can't be that good. It might take a while, like you said.
Yeah, let's move to running back.
Yeah.
Can Saquon return to form?
Yeah.
There are reasons to think he can. There are reasons to think he can't.
It's
because
a really
of the age and the injuries. And
yeah. I mean, the last 4 years, he's got a 3.9 rushing average, which is one of the lowest in the league. It's like second lowest and of regular running backs. But then you think, well, he never had a good he never had a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. And in my 10 obs, I wrote that the Eagles in the same span since Stoutland got here in 13, the Giants have had no offensive lineman make a Pro Bowl. Eagles have had 23.
Andrew Thomas hasn't done it?
No. Chris Snee, I think, was their last one in 12. He's never had another offensive Pro Bowler next to him other than Evan Ingram 1 year. He's never had receivers like this. He's never been in an offense where he's not the focal point. So I keep going back and forth. Like, he's had a ton of touches. He's had injuries. Has there been a cumulative effect that we started to see last year? He did not have a great year. And he was hurt at the end of the year. Or how much of that was a product of just being around bad players and a bad offense and bad coaching? All of which he won't have here, I think. So I keep going back and forth on Saquon. I don't really know. And again, that makes it kind of fun.
Yeah.
What's your hunch?
My hunch is going to be good.
How good? Like Pro Bowl good? Like,
yeah, I think he's going to be that good. And you're right. It is tricky to figure out. You go back and watch him though. And even playing through an injury, I thought he still looked pretty good. I think he can at least play to DeAndre Swift level last year, but I think he's a better player than Swift in in every area, just about.
Okay.
I think he's a more well-rounded player.
Swift's probably a better pure runner at this point. Saquon's probably a better receiver, better blocker, definitely a better blocker.
I'm not even sure if that's true about pure runner.
I think it is, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to compare them. I like Swift more than you do. We've been through this.
Yeah, I think look, and I don't want to knock DeAndre Swift. I thought he played really well. I think it was largely a product of the environment.
That's fair. I mean, look at Miles.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, they had similar last years here. So we'll see if Swift does what Miles did in Carolina, then certainly good evidence that.
Do you think we'll have some hints about Saquon in training camp, or is it tough to tell?
Yeah, I think it's tough to tell with running backs. Yeah. I know Rashad Penny didn't look very good in training camp last year, so maybe we can tell a little. I don't know. I don't think we will.
Okay. We'll have to just wait for the year,
I guess.
Okay. How about receiver? I don't think we have any questions about A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I think most of those have been answered. What about after that? I mean, do they have wide receiver 3 on this team right now?
I think no. I'm
just kind of with you. I think if there's a position they could add a starter at, it's probably receiver.
Yeah, and I think there's some good stories. And John Ross is a guy. How do you not root for this guy with his story? Hasn't played in 2 years. Hasn't really played in 4 years. Hasn't been produced. First round pick. Trying to, he's fast and he's a great story. Paris Campbell. He's kind of trying to reinvent his career. Second round pick.
I think we all agree, if it is someone who's here, Paris Campbell's in the lead. I
guess, just by default.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's guys like, there's the Joseph Nagatas and those guys. Can they take a step forward? But I don't see it.
And the rookies, one of them could surprise us.
Maybe.
I think it's tough to rely on a late round rookie, even though I'm intrigued by both of those guys.
Sure.
Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson.
Yeah.
Can you really throw them in the starting lineup and say, you're going to play 1,000 plays this year? I don't know.
Yeah. I just don't see it. Maybe they just don't think third receiver is that important since they have AJ and Devontae, they have Goddard, they have Saquon, they've got weapons, they got Gainwell still for another year.
But that guy's going to play.
Third receiver.
Yeah.
I know.
It's and the thing Nick Sirianni brought up in the spring about, it doesn't, his basic point was the fifth skill guy doesn't have to be a receiver, but more often than not, it's going to be, unless they completely buck the trend of football in the modern era. Like, it's going to be a receiver.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think that guy's here. I guess Paris Campbell's the most likely. I think he did have a 600-yard season once. So did Quez Watkins.
Ago,
yeah. so that position's kind of been a jinx between Quez and Zach Pascal and OZ. They just haven't gotten the production they wanted out of it. Anyone else?
I think you could feel better about it going into last year than you can this year.
Yeah.
No question, honestly.
Yeah.
There was some sort of a relatively high floor with a guy like Zacchaeus or even Quez.
Yeah.
Didn't pan out great, but I think they had more at that spot
going
last year
in
that you could rely on at least.
Yeah, that's true. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if you can get that guy off the street. I think it might take giving up something.
I think it's a trade. That guy isn't on the street.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No, I don't think so. Because if there's a guy on the street, he's going to be worse than what they have.
How about tight end? Dallas Goedert's number one. And we can talk about Goedert a little bit for a minute. Like, I thought he had a tremendous training camp last year and then didn't really pan out that way in the season. I thought last training camp, it was like A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert were both primed to have huge years, and then only one did.
Yeah, it's time for Goedert to have that big year. He's shown flashes of it. He's had injuries, had some big games. But, yeah, he hasn't been able to really put it together. I thought he'd be a two-time Pro Bowler by now. And we'll see. He's getting at that age where you wonder if maybe this is just what he is. And he's good. Good player. Top 10 tight end,
sure.
top 10, top 12 when he's healthy. I'm kind of curious about the tight end 2 spot because those guys played a lot of snaps last year. I mean, Jack Stoll played like 400 snaps. Calcaterra played like 150. Alberto played a handful. Those guys played over 600 and caught 9 passes for 68 yards. And I know that's not the biggest thing you look for from that position, but you want them to at least be a factor in the passing game.
Yeah, I think the benchmark here is, will Jalen Hurts trust them if they're wide open? Like, will he throw the football to them?
Yeah.
Maybe Uzomah will. Like, he's a 10-year vet, has a little bit of clout. He's had good seasons. I don't think he's going to be, a great player here. To me, though, he's tight end 2 because of his blocking ability, his size, and his experience. I'd be kind of surprised if he's not tight end 2.
They seem to like Alberto.
But unless he suddenly learns how to block a lot better, I don't think that's the function of that position in this offense.
Yeah. I guess that's a good guess. I mean, he's not a blocker.
And neither is Calcaterra. He's a smaller tight end.
Yeah.
If you're looking for someone to just play in line and block, which they might be when they're in 12, I think it's probably going to be Uzomah.
It's interesting. I still think Alberto, I mean, they kept him on the roster all year. There's something they like about him. Maybe they feel like he can get, he's still a young guy. I think he's 26. It's a 4th-round pick, maybe. So maybe they feel like there's something there blocking-wise. I haven't seen it. We didn't really see a lot of him.
Yeah, and we didn't get to see him in training camp last year either.
Right.
He was a late arrival.
Yeah, he was. So I'll go with Alberto. We'll differ there.
Okay.
But it's certainly a big question.
I mean, I think there's a chance he could beat out Calcaterra for that 3rd spot.
Right. And I think with Goddard's injuries, it becomes kind of a bigger issue than just who's tight end 2. It's like you might have to play 3, 4. I mean, when Calcaterra and Jack Stoll started, I mean, they're both late round. Well, Stoll was undrafted. They're both like high effort guys, but they're just not that good. And it showed. I mean, the offense just isn't the same without Goedert.
Yeah, I agree with that. Offensive line, starting with the interior. I mean, the big question is, how do they replace Jason Kelce? And we know, like, functionally that Cam Jorgens is in there at center. How do you think he'll perform? And then right guard, we think Tyler Steen is the front runner, but if he slips a little bit, they have options.
Yeah, they do. And you want to start with center. I mean, I think he'll be fine. I think it's going to be hard. I think He's not Jason Kelsey, and people have to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's a really good player, and I think he'll be fine. I think he'll really grow into it. I know the biggest thing with him is he's got the mentality to be able to follow a Hall of Famer and not be overwhelmed, he'll just go out and be himself. He's just a Nebraska farm guy.
It's nice that he got to play with Jason and know Jason.
Yeah.
So that it's just it's like his teammate and not, it had Kelsey retired and they had a rookie going in there who didn't know this guy. He's like,
right.
He's replacing a legend, whereas Cam is just replacing his buddy.
Kind of like Macho Harris trying to replace Doc as a rookie.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think he's got the mentality for it. And I think he can play. I mean, Kelsey helped draft him. So he's got that stamp of approval. I think right guard's the bigger question for me. And I don't know. I don't know if Steen can handle. I liked his attitude. I liked what he said when we talked to him in the spring. I liked that he was accountable, and he said, "Look, I wasn't very good last year when I played against the Cowboys, even though they won the game, and they don't beat the Cowboys very often." I like that he said, "I had to be a lot better. That's not the player I am." I like that, but that doesn't guarantee he's going to be able to handle it.
No,
he looks like a tackle. He doesn't look like a guard. He's not built like a guard. So,
but the Eagles like tackle-sized guards anyway.
They do. Matt Pryor, but
I was thinking different guys than Matt Pryor, but okay.
Andrew Gardner. They like tall guards, but with a shorter quarterback, you wonder about that. There are some options.
I mean, Landon, no one's worried about that on the other side.
What's he, about 6'5"?
He's like 6'6".
Is he?
Yeah.
Who's an interesting guy? And we talk about, like, if Steen falters, they have Hennessy, they signed from Temple. They have Becton, who came in late. Max Sharping started a lot of games in the league, and they brought him in late, which was interesting to me.
To me, that made me wonder about Hennessy.
Yeah, exactly. It made me think maybe they're not too comfortable with him. Plus, they were so gleeful that Becton was willing to try guard. That also tells you. Yeah. So,
well, Becton, in spring he played some right tackle and he played some left guard. Did not play right guard, but put those two together, maybe he can play right guard.
Yeah, I think Sharping might make the team if he has a good camp and could be that backup right guard. Could be the starter if it doesn't. I mean, he started like 40 games at guard in his career, so he's the most experienced.
We should throw Trevor Keegan in the mix. I think it's probably unlikely as the rookie, but.
Yeah. But I think Sharping might be most likely. I mean, he started the most games at guard on the team other than Dickerson. It's probably not that far off.
Okay.
Mid-30s for both of them, probably. So I think he's in the mix. To
be fair, he did start a lot of games, and then they tried to upgrade, like they needed to upgrade.
Oh, no,
you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like he was.
I'm not saying any of these guys is, Brandon Brooks here.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think he's an option.
Yeah. And then at tackle, if Becton isn't in the mix to be right guard, is he just the swing guy? And does that make Fred Johnson a little more expendable?
I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
I like Big Fred. What a good singer he is.
He's fun to be around.
There's always something happening around his locker. There's usually like 3 or 4 guys gathered around. He's singing or he's just laughing. He's got this laugh that you could hear like outside in the parking lot. So I like Big Fred. But I think Becton's your backup right left tackle. And I like having that guy.
It's a bit of a departure. They haven't had that in quite a while.
I haven't had that guy. I guess Big V was probably the last guy that
kind of, but even like him at the end was like he could play guard. Like he wasn't just pure swing tackle.
Yeah.
We thought last year maybe Dennis Kelly could be the pure swing tackle. Remember that? So well.
Yeah.
That was last year, wasn't it?
It was. It was a big story one day at training camp.
Things changed quickly.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
All right, you want to take a break? We'll get defense on the other side. We have some questions to answer, and we'll do all that. Sound good?
Yep.
Let's do it.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, we're back. Let's get into defense, defensive tackle. Are the Georgia guys ready for this?
Well, I think two of them are. I think I'm not so sure about Nolan Smith and Jordan Davis, but I'm pretty confident in Jalen Carter and Keely Ringo, who doesn't really fit in that conversation. But I don't really worry about Jalen Carter. I think he'll be fine. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. Jordan Davis, I just don't know.
And it's funny because I don't know if there's anything Jordan Davis can do in training camp to really alleviate those fears. Sure. I think he can show good signs like he did in the spring, but it's about playing 17 games and playing a lot of snaps.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's talent there. We saw it the first 5 games. It was no more than that, 5 games of the season before he started dropping off and precipitously. I don't know. And like, he says all the right things. I mean, he knows he's got to be in better shape. He knows he's got to be more consistent. He knows he's got to not just get in great shape, but stay in great shape. He says all the right things. He's just got to do it.
Yeah.
And, it might turn out where he's just a good player.
This year is going to dictate his career.
It's a good chance of that. I mean, some guys it clicks later on, but he was a pretty high first round pick.
13th overall. They traded up to get him.
13th overall. You really need to be better than just adequate.
And a position where, he wasn't certainly known for his pass rush abilities. So you better be a lights out run defender.
Yeah.
And they drafted him because they love the athleticism combination with the size. I don't know what to expect from him.
He's got to be able to move. And by the end of last year, he couldn't move. It was.
Yeah. You think about like the highlights from Georgia, like the one highlight everyone showed was like him running across the field at, 340, whatever pounds. If he can't do that. Yeah.
It's not good.
How about the defensive tackles after that? If they keep 5, is it just Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Moro Ojimo, and Marlon Tuipulotu? Could Gabe Hall sneak in there? Undrafted from Baylor. PJ Mustapher. I guess want to back up nose tackle.
Those are the next guys, but be a surprise if they do. But we've seen stranger things happen.
Position maybe they would add.
Certainly,
they don't
possible.
Really have the bodies even right now.
Yeah, I could see them adding there.
Mm-hmm.
Fletch gave you so much flexibility.
I watched that hit you.
Yeah, it was sad. They don't have that. And I mean, gosh, what did he average? 45 snaps a game last year, something like that. So, I mean, that's 750 snaps they've got to replace. Something like that. What's 45 times 17?
A lot of snaps.
765. That was a pretty good guess. Yeah, that's a lot of snaps. So that tells me maybe, and I like Milton. Milton's solid. He'll eat up a bunch of snaps. Beyond that, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. I liked Ojimo last year. I thought he brought some juice. I'm not just saying that because he was my surviving camp.
I can't wait to see your surviving camp guy. I
have an idea.
Okay.
I won't say.
We'll keep everyone posted.
I want to make sure I can. The players got to agree to talk to me every week, and it's easier when they don't know me. But it's still it's a time commitment from them. So.
Yeah, once they know you, this is the last thing they want to do.
They look back and they're, why did I agree to do this?
Yeah, and if you're new to the podcast, new to our Eagles coverage, Dave does a series every summer where he, what do you talk once a week?
Try to around once
every 5-6 days with a rookie, just what they're going through, how it's going for them, and it's always a good read, especially. And most of the guys you've talked to have been pretty honest about, because most rookies are going to have hard days. They're going to have disappointing days. They're going to struggle. This is all new to them. So when they start talking about that stuff, it's really compelling. It was Jordan Mailata, your first one?
Yeah, he was the first one in 2018. Then TJ Edwards was the next year. And then didn't have one, right?
COVID year. We weren't allowed anywhere near him.
Kyron Johnson, Morrow. I think that's it.
22, 23. Yeah. So anyway, it's good stuff, and we'll keep you posted on that over the next week or two.
Yeah. On the edge, I mean, I think there's questions with just about every player out there, and it's really can they replace Haason Reddick's production? We should mention as we record this, Haason Reddick reportedly holding out of Jets camp, which is, I don't quite understand what happened there and why the Jets traded for a guy they didn't.
I remember.
Sign.
I think we were in the office when that trade went down, or we were across the street. Where were we? But we expected, like, within half an hour of the trade announcement, there'd be a contract announcement.
Sure.
And it was like an hour. It's like, well, they haven't announced the new contract. I guess they're doing it tomorrow, and they still haven't announced it. You don't make a trade like that if you don't have a contract with the guy. You just don't. So that was hard to believe it was misplayed by the Jets.
Anyway, they don't have him, and you could count on Haason Reddick. He was going to produce for you.
Yeah.
Now you're left with Sweat, Bryce Huff, Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, and then Jalix Hunt, who we don't really expect to play a ton on defense this year.
Right.
All those guys have question marks.
Yeah. I think out of those four, Sweat might be. Look, he didn't have a sack the second half of the year, so he's a question mark. But I've seen enough from him over his career. I'm pretty confident, and like the entire team was in a slump the last month and a half. So I kind of toss out Sweat's last month and a half, 2 months, just because the whole thing was falling apart. It wasn't a good atmosphere to excel. Braden Mann was the only guy that was playing well, and Kelsey and Fletch, ironically. So I would expect Sweat to get back to that double digit. Plus, he's in a contract year. I think I'd be surprised if he's not back in that 10, 12 sack range.
Okay. They would love that. And then Bryce Huff has been good with the Jets, but he's going to need to start now. He's going to need to play more. He's going to probably need to play double his career high in snaps.
Yeah. And he's got to have to stop the run sometimes, and we'll see what that looks like. I don't know. I'd love to sit here and say I'm sure he'll get double-digit sacks, but the analytics say he's been a consistently good pass rusher, but there's a big jump from that to can you do it on the field and be a full-time player and get 8 to 12 sacks, which is 8's probably the lower end of what they'd like from him. I think BG is going to be BG. What's he going to play? 12 snaps?
That would be ideal. I mean, he had to play more than that last year.
Yeah, he did, because Nolan, and I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about Nolan.
I don't know. He had such a good training camp last year. I think the expectations were higher because we saw the flashes, and then it didn't really pan out.
No, it didn't really pan out.
He refuses to talk about that shoulder.
Well, I asked him about it when we talked to him in April.
Yeah. Or
in May, I should say. And he pulled up his sleeve and held it. He's fine and flexed for us. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
It might be fine now. I don't think it was fine last year.
No, it certainly wasn't. I mean, he said it wasn't. I'm surprised he didn't get it scoped. I think I asked him if he had any work done. He said no, which is a good sign. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Nolan Smith. I mean, what would be a good year for him? Let's say if Sweat gets 12, and I mean, Nolan Smith's going to be the third guy, but he'll play a lot of snaps. I mean, you'd like to see 6, 7 sacks.
Yeah, ideally, and takes over the number 3 role.
Yeah,
from Brandon Graham.
Pressures,
please.
Yeah,
don't make Brandon Graham play all these snaps.
That's the last thing BG wants. No, BG would probably love to play. Sure. And I think BG playing 12 to 15 is probably the upper limit. He'll get some pressures.
Mm-hmm.
He takes care of himself.
And if Nolan can be that guy, then you can also get BG inside.
Yeah.
On occasion.
Yeah.
Where he's always been really good.
And BG's so savvy. He knows all these tackles, and he knows how to beat them. And, he'll get his 3 sacks and call it a career. And what's he going to do? I mean, he'll be working for the Eagles next year.
Sure.
He's not going anywhere. I just wonder what his title will be. Like assistant to the general manager. Like,
be great.
That's like the catch-all title. Yeah, I'm just glad he'll be around. But yeah.
At linebacker, I mean,
more questions.
Yeah, I think we know Devin White is going to be a starter. They paid him a little bit of money. It's significant for them, but starter next to him, Zach Bond was getting the run there in the spring. Was that just because there wasn't really a reason to play him on the edge in the spring? Or is it, because they actually like him there? And then Nakobe Dean, I think most people would probably want to see Nakobe Dean earn that spot and grab it and play well, but he's coming off some pretty serious injuries last year.
Foot injuries. And I wonder how much Zach Baun is just look, he's a smart veteran. He's been around, he's played, but I just wonder if this is Vic Fangio saying, you know what, Nakobe, earn it.
I don't know.
You're not getting anything handed to you. I mean, it's I just can't imagine Nakobe won't get at least a chance to compete for that job. 3rd round pick 2 years ago.
You would think Howie Roseman would really want that.
Yeah. Scouts. I mean, ballyhooed 3rd round pick 2 years ago. You're going to play Zach Baun ahead of him, who's not even a off-ball linebacker? Maybe, but Nakobe's got at least got a shot, I would think.
Yeah, you would hope so. How about cornerback? This is, to me, my most the thing I'm looking forward to most of the summer is seeing who wins these battles.
And this is good because this isn't about, like, when we talk about like the candidates at right guard, it's like, well, you don't get super excited, but when you talk about Keeley and Isaiah Rodgers and Quignon, and even throw Cooper DeJean in there, Sean Stevens, I mean, there's talent, there's young talent, guys who can run. I think it's gonna be great competition, and it's competition where it's not like, someone's going to win by default because they're the only guy that can.
Yeah, you feel like whoever ends up in those spots is going to be a good player.
Yeah, and whoever doesn't is going to be a good player. So that's going to be I think the main attraction throughout camp is going to be that cornerback battle. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and then at safety,
and then guys like Eli Ricks. I mean, I think he can play a little bit.
Eli Ricks, Josh Jobe pushing for the roster at the back end.
Yeah, so many corners.
Yeah. I think we might see a trade there at some point.
I think so.
Even if it's James Bradbury, who we didn't mention, we think we're going to maybe see him.
Well, he's in the safety conversation.
Yeah. Which, hey, I am actually like a little intrigued to see him play safety.
Do you think we'll see him in practice?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm also looking forward to seeing CJ Gardner-Johnson. We never really got to see him in a full practice because he got traded to the Eagles late in 2022. So curious to see if he'll provide that spark that they've been missing.
And he's one of the only known quantities on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe the only one that you what you're going to get from him. Like, he's not going to get. He probably won't.
And even he hasn't played safety very much.
No.
I think Reed, you kind of know what he is.
Yeah.
Reed Blankenship.
Yeah, I know.
I know you know. People, I believe it or not, people listen to this.
I wonder if Sydney's going to, and obviously Sydney won't be ready for the start of the season, but I kind of feel like by the time the season's over, Sydney might be starter.
That would be ideal. Yeah. And we don't know if he's not going to be ready for the start of the season.
No, we don't, but I think it's a fair chance. Yeah.
We'll see.
That's
all. Special teams, we want to see who the return guys are. But, especially with the new rules on kickoffs. But I don't know how much they're really going to show.
Yeah.
In practices.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see at least who gets reps. Mm-hmm. I think Cooper G might end up being the kick return guy.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
He's kind of an electric player.
Yeah. You want to see him with the ball in his hands a little bit, see how that looks.
Yeah. I have a bunch of questions here.
Let's get to them.
Yeah. And we don't have a ton of time, but man, we
have as much time as we want.
We want to thank everyone for sending these questions into our eagle-eye at NBCUniUni.com email address. It's up on the screen. It's eagle-eye at NBCUni.com. You can send us questions. When we first started this, I thought we'd be able to answer most of the questions. And now I realize I was foolish with that. So we appreciate everyone who sends one. We're never going to be able to answer them all.
We talk really fast.
Yeah, even if we did. So we appreciate you. Hopefully we'll read yours. If not, don't take it as an insult. We got a ton. I think we had over 70 in the inbox when I checked the other day. So but we'll get to as many as we can. The first one I have here, and I just have a few of them on my screen. First one from Maton, I believe that's how you pronounce
Maton,
that.
M-A-T-O-N?
M-A-T-A-N.
Okay. Matan.
Yeah. Okay. Matan.
I'm going with Matan.
I'd go Matan. I had to watch the Eagles' late season collapse last year while living in Antarctica.
Oh my God.
And I wanted to thank you for helping me get through that tough time in a very isolated environment.
Isolated. I get it.
I hope it gladdens you to know that your podcast is loved even at the bottom of the world. Is there a story that comes to mind when you saw a rookie do something in training camp. I knew they were going to be special. Thanks for everything. First off, we get so many emails from people out of state, out of the country. They say like where they're tied to their favorite team, which is I love everyone local, but I find that very cool.
Yeah. Well, and Matan should know we're going to be doing a live podcast in Antarctica at the weather station down there.
How about you? Is there a something that comes to mind with a rookie where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this guy? We kind of saw it last year with Jalen Carter a little bit.
Yeah. I remember Lito Shepherd as a rookie was jumping every route and picking off passes all over the place. So I think Lito was a guy that, boy, you just knew he had something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was 22 years ago now.
Yeah.
That's the one that comes to mind.
I think Devontae Smith pretty early. There weren't like a ton of wow plays, but it was after what we had seen from their receivers to watch him work, you realize it was just something different.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, that is good. Next one from JT. I work overnight and listen to every new podcast. It helps me through the night. Do you think Nolan Smith can play off-ball linebacker?
No.
In a pinch, maybe.
Maybe for a snap or two.
Yeah, I don't think like position switch.
No.
I think he has the ability to drop into coverage, which these edges are going to be asked to do.
Yeah. But I don't think you'd want to see it more than a play here or there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Next one from John. Do you think the wide receiver 3 position has been a problem in the last 2 seasons because of the personnel? Or do you think that this is not a very desirable position for free agents or a developmental piece because of the amount of weapons already on offense?
That's a great question. It's something I've thought about a lot because OZ, Pascal, even Quez. I mean, Quez is kind of different, but they all had success earlier before they got here.
Some guy named Julio had been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, but he's
a little
40. But also had 3 touchdowns. I think he led the team in touchdowns over the last 6 weeks. Isn't it interesting that has any team ever had 3 players, 3 future Hall of Famers retire off their roster at the same offseason?
Julio hasn't retired.
He hasn't, but he will.
I don't know about that. He might try to play.
He might try. But anyway, I wonder about that. And I wonder how much of that, and you kind of touched on this, is just Jalen. It's like I can throw to AJ, Devontae, or Dallas. Why do I want to throw the ball to Zach Pascal? So I've thought a lot about that because it seems like more than a coincidence that WR3 never does well here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it also might be personnel part of it too.
I think it's probably a combination of it. It's a tricky thing because that guy's going to play a lot.
I'd like to see him draft a receiver.
We thought about, they did this year, obviously, but not high. It was a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick.
I mean, like even like a Jason Avant, who was a 4? Was he a 4th round pick? It was just about a year ago. We saw him getting dunked in the tank across the street. But just kind of a mid-round, 3rd or 4th round receiver, I think would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good question.
Next one from Hunter. Hey, fellas, love the pod. Just curious on what you guys would think of Hakeem Butler as wide receiver 3 coming off Offensive Player of the Year in the UFL. Thanks, and keep up the great work.
Was he really?
Yeah, he played really well.
Well, I think if he signs anywhere, it'd probably be Jacksonville because we know their coach loves him.
Good for him. I do like, and players can develop, right? We saw that with Greg Ward. He left for a little while, played another league, and got a chance in the NFL.
He's not with the team, is he?
No, but he reportedly worked out with the Texans.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if
one of my favorite guys.
Yep. But I do like that. I like the idea of these other leagues kind of being developmental leagues and play well, then maybe you get a chance.
And I mean, Howie certainly has never hesitated from
you keep an eye on
getting guys from leagues we've never heard of.
So not Hakeem Butler?
Not Hakeem Butler.
Okay. Next one from Alistair. Good day, men. Australian living in England. Wow. Got into the NFL since 2018 and believe it has passed Aussie rules as the best football on the planet. Still waiting for the Eagles to get to London again. My question is concerning the tight end position. I think Goddard slipped back a notch last year, but in this offense with Barkley, Is it as important as of a position as it's been? If not, have they erred in not drafting one instead of the late round receivers and backup linemen?
It's a fair question. I feel bad. He could be an Eagles fan in 2018.
Like, I just missed it.
Missed a Super Bowl championship, and he was following Australian rules football that year.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. They certainly didn't seem too interested in addressing the position.
It was also not a great tight end class. I believe it had some depth to it. I think tight end was a position I thought they might try to draft.
Yeah.
And there were some players available when they picked. I have to go back and see the kind of shadow draft and see who was there when they picked. But I agree with that. I think it's not crazy. They don't draft a lot of tight ends.
Rarely. Yeah.
I mean, they drafted Calcaterra, they drafted Goddard,
Ertz, and
Ertz,
Selleck. I mean,
and since Howie though, Clay Harbor was the only other one.
Yeah, if I forget him, he'll kill me. He's a big time listener.
Yeah. I mean, they just don't draft a lot of tight ends.
Yeah, they don't. I guess it's just not that important to them.
Or maybe they think they can get by at the tight end 2 position with a guy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean by not that important.
Yeah. Okay. Next one here from Bruce. I really enjoy the show and listen all the time on the way back from working long hours at the hospital. I wanted to ask you what you guys thought if Jalen Hurts takes a step back this year. Do you think Lurie and Howie are tempted to draft another QB? I believe so, considering how explosive our offense could be and the money invested in it.
Yeah, I just, first of all, you know how bad he'd have to be for them to draft a quarterback?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, he had 4 really bad games at the end of the year when everyone was playing poorly. The coach was, the coordinator play caller was about to get fired. AJ was hurt. It was just, before that, he had won 27 out of 30 starts. So I don't even acknowledge the question because I don't think Jalen has ever really, he hasn't shown me that. Look, he didn't play as well last year as he did the year before. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think he's got it. I think he's part of it. He's got to play better, cut down the turnovers. I just can't see him playing at a level where they get together at the end of the year and say, we got to replace this guy. Yeah. I mean, beyond the fact that if they got rid of him, it'd be $115 million in dead money.
Yeah, I looked it up.
What is it? I just guessed.
107. You're close.
Oh, how about that? Why'd you look it up?
I read the question.
Oh, I see. I don't see it. I mean, he's a really good player. And he's a really good player who had a bad finish of the season, just like Josh Sweat did, just like, Slay did, just like everybody on the team did. There's a lot of good players that did not play well at the end of the year.
Doesn't mean he's quarterback for life.
Doesn't mean he's quarterback for life.
We saw with the last quarterback, things can take a turn. Yeah. But I'd be shocked if it happens soon.
Yeah, and I can't imagine Jalen playing the way Carson did in 2020. I just can't imagine that happening over a full year. I think and I like Carson, and I think Carson's I think the Chiefs got a really good backup. I think he's one of the better backups in the league. But I think Jalen has a mental strength that maybe Carson at that point in his career maybe still didn't have. I think that was the biggest problem with Carson that year was he couldn't handle Jalen being there. He couldn't handle. It was a weird year. It was COVID year.
He was in quicksand. He was stuck, and the more he tried to get out of it, he buried himself deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what year was he drafted? 16?
Carson? Yeah.
9th year.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Yeah. Carson Wentz is his 9th year.
Next one from Danny. First off, I got to say how much I appreciate you guys. I work in sales, so I'm in my car a lot. I often find myself listening to 2 different Eagles podcasts, but yours is always more in-depth, loaded with actual interview quotes, and I love your banter. I play the over-under game in my head for how often Dave can get Rube riled up over jersey numbers. Now that we're removed from the 22-23 seasons with an entirely new season in the rearview, it's hard not to start to draw comparisons between 22-23 and 17-18 with one main difference. Here's the question. How does the franchise continue to learn from their mistakes to not have another 5-year gap between Super Bowl appearances and stay a top contender while we have this core together?
Well, it was a 4-year gap.
Sure.
I mean, 18, 19, 20, 21. So 2 Super Bowls in 6 seasons is pretty good.
It's pretty good. I think, but I do
with
agree
different head coaches and different quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree with part of the premise, though, of this question, that there are lessons to learn, because after the Super Bowl, I think, and Howie's admitted this, there was like sentimentality played into their decisions, and they tried to just keep running it back.
Right.
And it got them in trouble.
Although they were good enough in 18 to be very competitive and win a playoff game and come within an Alshon drop of maybe winning another one.
Yeah. I think we're more talking about like
19
and then 20, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's certainly an issue. I think this team hasn't had many extended stretches of losing.
Mm-hmm.
They've only had 8 losing seasons under Jeff Lurie.
It's pretty crazy.
He bought the team in 94, 95. They've never, when's the last time they had back-to-back losing seasons under the same head coach? I believe it was 97, 98 under Ray Rhodes.
Okay.
Right. So I think there's been a consistency there that most franchises don't have. And I think Howie has a pretty good idea of how to get to the Super Bowl and what it takes. So, yeah. But here's a question. Will they be in a Super Bowl in the next 5 years?
It's really tough to get there.
Like, I don't feel like there's that one, like in the AFC, you got the Chiefs, you got a quarterback in his prime, a Hall of Fame coach. In the NFC, I'm not sure.
And I think the AFC in general has like
the best teams.
They have like Cincinnati still has Joe Burrow. The Ravens still have Lamar. Like
the Bills have Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when I ranked the top quarterbacks, I think my top 4 were in the AFC. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's that one team blocking the Eagles. I think the 49ers are really good. They might take a step back this year. Dallas, you don't worry about them in the postseason. The Eagles just got to beat them in the regular season. So I think they have I'm going to say they'll get back to one in the next 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to do one more question here?
Let's do 2 more.
2 more. Okay. Next one from Taki. U2, the band. Overrated or overhated?
All right. So U2, back when we were at the Vet, we had a press room in the Vet up on the 4th floor. And when there were concerts at the Vet, we'd bring coolers into the press room. And when we got done with all our work, we would just hang out there. And then when a concert started, we would just pop into the press box and nobody would stop us. And I saw U2 there and they were great. They were like really, really good. And I wish I could tell you what tour it was, but I don't remember. But I remember hearing the guitar player, The Edge. He goes by the name of The Edge. I don't think it's his real name, but he played during sound check. He was playing Where the Streets Have No Name with no vocals. Mm-hmm. He was just playing the guitar part. And it was incredible. But as a band overall, I think they're probably a little overrated. But that was a great show. Okay. I don't love them, and I certainly don't love their newer stuff.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan. But yeah.
Yeah.
So last one here. This is a question for me.
That was the whole question. Is U2 overrated or overhated? Yeah. Interesting.
It's a question for me and a question for you. Question for me is, did you grow up an NFL fan, and who was your favorite team growing up? Yeah. I mean, I was an Eagles fan growing up. So
I think that's no surprise to anyone who reads your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up here. I was a fan of the team. So I have to remove myself from it now, but it's fine.
It's hard for some guys to do that.
Yeah. I think I do it all right.
I think so too.
Okay. A question for Rube.
Yeah.
I'm from Lancaster, PA.
Oh.
Have you ever been to Lancaster? If so, did you enjoy it?
I love Lancaster. I was just there. I love going to, so there's a park right across the street from the Marriott called Long's Park, and they have free concerts every Sunday. And I happen to be there when, what's the guy's name? Darn it. It's a really nice setup, and I wish I could remember the guy's name. Oh, Mark Broussard. You know Mark Broussard?
No.
He just played there, and I walked over to Long's Park. It's a beautiful setup. They have a band shell. There's a big field. There's a hill. People bring blankets, and there's park benches and picnic tables. There's food trucks, and it's free. And I saw Mark Broussard in concert there on a Sunday night this summer in Lancaster. I love Lancaster. There's another park called Overlook Park where I go running.
How do you pronounce it?
Overlook.
Do you say
Overlook Park?
Lancaster
Park.
or Lancaster?
Lancaster.
You've said it both ways in the same sentence.
Well, I want to have my bases covered.
It's true.
I love driving around out there. Just the Amish country. It's beautiful. The farms, the red barns, shoe fly pie. There's some great farmers markets there. Bird in Hand Farmers Market is awesome. Yeah, I like it out there. Big fan of Lancaster. I could live out there.
Could you?
Yeah. I'd probably live in Manheim Township. That's right.
No. Could you, please?
That's good. That was a good one.
Yeah. All right.
One for Dave.
Want to remind everyone, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
We're going to have podcasts after every practice.
I was going to get to that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Please, if you enjoy the podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe there as well. Go ahead.
We'll be doing this after every practice, and that's going to be this year. It'll be more often than last year because there's a few more practices. So, yeah, you'll be sick of us by the end of the summer.
Yeah, can't wait for training camp. It's finally here. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.